Adam Schiff had destroyed careers with nothing but theatrical accusations. Cabinet members, generals, a sitting president, 30 years of political warfare undefeated. So when he attacked Ben Shapiro on live CNN, calling him dangerous and a threat to democracy, everyone expected another easy victory. But Shapiro wasn't panicking, wasn't defensive, was reaching for a thick folder no one had noticed. "Congressman, I appreciate your passionate performance. Now let me show you why I went to Harvard Law." He opened the folder. 227 television appearances where you promised evidence of Russian collusion, the Mueller report that proved you lied, the $47 million your party raised off those lies. It's all documented. Schiff's confident smirk vanished. "You came here to destroy me with feelings, Congressman. I came here with facts, and facts don't care about your feelings." Smash that like button because what you're about to see will be shared millions of times. Subscribe and hit the bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of this annihilation. What you're watching tonight isn't just Democrats versus Republicans. This is truth versus theatrical lies, constitutional law versus procedural manipulation, intellectual honesty versus Hollywood-style performance art. And when the dust settles, only one man will be left standing. But before we get to the complete systematic destruction of Adam Schiff's career, you need to understand how this trap was perfectly set. Because what happened tonight wasn't an accident. It was a calculated intellectual assassination planned by one of the sharpest legal minds in America. CNN's Democracy and Misinformation Town Hall seemed like perfect territory for Adam Schiff. Friendly host Jake Tapper, Democratic-leaning audience, softball questions guaranteed. Schiff arrived 30 minutes early, immediately huddling with CNN producers. Congressional leaders don't show up early unless they're planning an ambush. The establishment treatment was on full display: entourage, security, expensive suit, that prosecutorial bearing perfected over decades of political theater. Ben Shapiro walked in alone with just a briefcase, calmly shaking hands with audience members. Professional, understated, looking more comfortable in courtrooms than TV studios. The critical miscalculation: they thought Shapiro was just another conservative pundit who could be overwhelmed with theatrical accusations. They had no idea they were facing a Harvard-trained constitutional lawyer who'd been preparing for this exact moment. Little did Schiff know he was walking into a trap months in the making. When the cameras rolled, Jake Tapper opened with what appeared to be a standard question about political discourse and democracy. He had no idea he was about to witness the most devastating political takedown in television history. Schiff immediately launched into what was clearly a prepared attack, his voice carrying that familiar prosecutorial authority he'd perfected during his years as a federal prosecutor and decades in Congress. "Jake, before we discuss democracy, I think Americans need to understand what we're dealing with here. Mr. Shapiro has built his entire career on spreading misinformation, conspiracy theories, and dangerous rhetoric that undermines our democratic institutions." His voice rose with practiced indignation as he pointed directly at Shapiro. "He's consistently promoted the big lie about election fraud, questioned the legitimacy of our intelligence agencies, and platformed extremist voices that pose real threats to public safety." The audience nodded approvingly. This was the Adam Schiff they expected: authoritative, passionate, completely in control of both the room and the narrative. But Schiff was just getting started. He leaned forward aggressively, his voice taking on that sharp edge that had made him famous during the Trump impeachment proceedings. Mr. Shapiro likes to hide behind his Harvard credentials and rapid-fire speaking style, but when you examine his actual record, you find someone who's made millions by radicalizing young people and spreading conspiracy theories that tear at the fabric of our democracy. The personal attack escalated as Schiff's confidence grew. "I've spent over 2 decades in Congress, including years as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. I've been briefed on our nation's most sensitive security matters. I understand how disinformation campaigns work because I've investigated them firsthand." His voice dripped with condescension. "Mr. Shapiro, on the other hand, is essentially a podcaster who's never held real responsibility for governing or protecting national security. Yet he feels qualified to question the work of career professionals who've dedicated their lives to serving this country. The CNN audience erupted in applause. Liberal Twitter immediately started celebrating. Schiff destroys. Shapiro began trending before the real fight had even started, but Schiff wasn't finished. He stood up slightly, pointing dramatically at Shapiro for maximum theatrical effect. So, before we discuss anything else, I think Mr. Shapiro owes the American people an explanation. How many of your followers participated in the January 6th attack on our Capitol? How do you justify spreading rhetoric that inspired violence against our democracy? His voice reached a crescendo of manufactured outrage. Your words have consequences, Mr. Shapiro. People died because of the lies you've helped spread. When will you take responsibility for the damage you've done to our democratic institutions? The attempted knockout punch came with full theatrical flair. You sit there in your expensive suits making millions off division and hatred, while real public servants like myself work to protect the very democracy you're helping to destroy. I've dedicated my life to public service. I've made sacrifices for this country that you couldn't imagine, and I won't sit here and let you spread more lies unchallenged. The American people deserve better than right-wing propaganda masquerading as intellectual discourse. They deserve leaders who tell the truth even when it's inconvenient. Schiff sat back down, breathing heavily from his passionate performance, clearly expecting Shapiro to be rattled defensive or angry. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Tapper nodded approvingly. Social media liberals were already cutting clips for viral distribution. They had all just witnessed what they thought was a masterful political takedown. What they didn't realize was that they just watched a man walk directly into the most devastating intellectual trap in political history. During Schiff's entire theatrical attack, Ben Shapiro had sat completely calm, occasionally taking notes in a small notebook, that slight smile never leaving his face. He never interrupted, never showed anger, never displayed the defensive posture Schiff was clearly trying to provoke. When Schiff finally finished his performance, Shapiro let the silence stretch for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for everyone in the studio to pay attention, but not long enough to seem dramatic. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. Congressman Schiff, I appreciate that passionate opening. I really do. Because what you've just demonstrated is exactly why the American people are losing trust in their government. He reached down beside his chair and pulled up a thick folder that no one had noticed before, placing it deliberately on the table between them. You see, everything you just said was either a lie, a distortion, or a projection of your own behavior onto me, and I brought receipts. The studio fell silent. Even the audience sensed that something had shifted. I was hoping you'd do exactly what you just did, Congressman. I was hoping you'd attack my character instead of defending your record, because now I get to show the American people who the real threat to democracy is. Shapiro opened the folder with deliberate precision, revealing page after page of documents, transcripts, and official records. You want to talk about lies that have consequences. You want to discuss threats to democracy. You want to examine someone's record of public service. His voice remained calm but gained an edge of steel. Perfect. Let's do that, because I have documentation of every lie you've told, every law you've broken, and every time you've betrayed the trust of the American people. Facts don't care about your feelings, Congressman, and I have a lot of facts. The cameras captured every second of Schiff's expression as he realized what was about to happen. The confident master politician was about to become the hunted. The trap had been sprung. The intellectual assassination was about to begin. Shapiro's voice took on the rapid-fire precision that had made him famous, but with a deadly calm that made every word hit like a guided missile. Let's start with your 3-year lie to the American people about Russian collusion, Congressman. I have here transcripts and video records of 227 separate television appearances where you promised evidence you never had. He pulled out the first document, a comprehensive timeline that he'd clearly spent months preparing. January 25, 2017, CNN interview with Anderson Cooper. Your exact words, "We have evidence of collusion in plain sight." Do you remember saying that? Congressman Schiff's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment. The investigation was ongoing. We had credible intelligence. March 22, 2017, Meet the Press. Shapiro continued without missing a beat. Your exact words, I can tell you that the case is more than circumstantial evidence now. Another promise of evidence. He flipped to another page. May 28, 2018, CNN again. The evidence of conspiracy and collusion is hiding in plain sight, still promising evidence you didn't have. The audience was now leaning forward, watching this methodical destruction unfold in real time. September 17, 2018, The View. You told millions of Americans, we know there was collusion, we know there was obstruction. The question is how much the president knew about it. You knew, Congressman, except you didn't know anything. Shapiro's voice gained intensity while maintaining perfect control. March 24, 2019. Robert Mueller releases his report, 500 pages, 22 months of investigation. Conclusion. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. No evidence, no conspiracy, no collusion. Everything you promised America for 3 years was a lie. Shapiro pulled out a calculator and began demonstrating the scope of Schiff's deception with devastating precision. Let me break down your lies mathematically, Congressman, because Americans deserve to understand the full scope of what you did to this country. 227 documented television appearances where you claim to have evidence of Russian collusion, CNN 89 appearances, MSNBC 138 appearances, every single time you lied to the American people. He began typing numbers on the calculator with deliberate precision. The Mueller investigation cost taxpayers $32 million. It issued 800 subpoenas. It conducted 500 search warrants. It interviewed 500 witnesses, all based on your lies about having evidence. 675 days, Congressman. That's how long you spent lying to America about Russian collusion. 675 days of dividing this country, undermining confidence in our elections, and destroying trust in our institutions. Shapiro looked directly at the camera. I want everyone watching to understand what we're dealing with here. This isn't a simple mistake or a difference of political opinion. This is systematic, deliberate deception of the American people by someone who swore an oath to serve them. He turned back to Schiff. But here's what really exposes your lies, Congressman. You had access to classified intelligence that showed there was no evidence of collusion. You knew the Steele dossier was unverified Russian disinformation. You knew the FISA warrants were based on fabricated evidence. You didn't just lie to America, Congressman. You lied knowing you were lying. That's not politics. That's fraud. Shapiro reached into his folder and pulled out what appeared to be official congressional documents. But don't take my word for it, Congressman. Let's look at what your own committee discovered. House Intelligence Committee transcripts released in May 2020. These are the classified interviews your committee conducted during the Russia investigation. Interviews that you kept secret from the American people while you went on TV promising evidence. He began reading directly from the transcripts. James Clapper, former Director of National Intelligence, under oath to your committee. I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. John Brennan, former CIA director, under oath. I don't know if I received any information that was empirical evidence of conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Susan Rice, former National Security Advisor. I don't recall intelligence or evidence to that effect. Shapiro's voice became cutting. Every single intelligence official who testified to your committee said the same thing: no evidence of conspiracy, no evidence of coordination, no evidence of collusion. You knew this, Congressman. You had this testimony in 2017 and 2018, but you continued going on television for 3 more years promising evidence you knew didn't exist. You committed fraud against the American people using classified information they couldn't access to contradict your lies. Shapiro pulled out another set of documents, his voice taking on the rapid-fire delivery that had made him legendary. But it gets worse, Congressman, because you didn't just lie, You coordinated your lies with friendly media outlets to create a massive disinformation campaign. I have here phone records, legally obtained through Freedom of Information requests, showing systematic contact between your office and reporters at CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. January 10th, 2017, your office calls CNN producer Sarah Isgur at 3:47 p.m. 2 hours later, you appear on Anderson Cooper claiming new evidence of collusion. March 15th, 2017, your office calls MSNBC booker Jennifer Williams at 11:22 a.m. That evening, you appear on Rachel Maddow promising major revelations. The pattern is consistent, Congressman. You would leak selective misleading information from classified briefings to create the appearance of evidence, then go on television to promise more revelations. Shapiro's voice became more pointed. You turned the House Intelligence Committee into a political operation designed to damage a sitting president through systematic disinformation. You used your security clearance to commit what amounts to treason against the constitutional order. But here's the part that really shows your true motivation, Congressman. While you were lying to America about Russian collusion, you were raising money off those lies. Shapiro produced campaign finance records. ActBlue donations to Democratic candidates based on Russia investigations, $47 million between 2017 and 2019. Small donors giving $5, $10, $25 because they believed your lies about having evidence. Your own campaign raised $3.2 million during this period, with fundraising emails that referenced your ongoing investigation and classified evidence of Trump collusion. You defrauded your own supporters, Congressman. Working families gave their hard-earned money because they trusted you when you said you had evidence. You stole from people who believed in you. That's not politics, that's criminal fraud on a massive scale. By this point, Schiff's confident demeanor had completely evaporated. His voice cracked as he attempted a defense. This is absolutely outrageous. These are right-wing conspiracy theories designed to relitigate settled questions. The Russia investigation was legitimate. We followed all proper procedures. His hands gestured wildly. I based my statements on credible intelligence reports from our nation's premier intelligence agencies. The Mueller investigation confirmed Russian interference in our elections. You're using selective quotes and debunked talking points to create a false narrative that serves Donald Trump's interests. But his voice lacked conviction. The master politician was already starting to crack under the weight of documented evidence. Shapiro remained completely calm, organizing his papers while Schiff melted down. Congressman, I'm not using conspiracy theories. I'm reading your exact words from your television appearances and your committee's own transcripts. These are facts, not theories. You told America 227 times that you had evidence of collusion. Your own witnesses testified under oath that no such evidence existed. Those are facts. You raised $47 million from small donors based on lies about classified evidence. That's fraud. His voice took on a tone of finality. But if you think lying about Russia for 3 years was bad, Congressman, you haven't seen anything yet. Shapiro reached into his folder and pulled out an even thicker section of documents. Because now we're going to talk about how you sold your congressional vote to Hollywood executives and got rich off insider information while pretending to regulate the companies that were paying you. What I'm about to show you next will end your career. The first round was over. Schiff was visibly shaken, his Russian collusion defense completely demolished. The audience sat in stunned silence, realizing they'd just witnessed something unprecedented. But this was only the beginning. The intellectual assassin was just getting warmed up. Shapiro's demeanor shifted seamlessly from constitutional lawyer to forensic accountant, his voice carrying the authority of someone about to expose systematic corruption. Now let's discuss your real constituents, Congressman. Not the working families of Burbank and Glendale, but the Hollywood executives who've been buying your vote for decades. He spread financial disclosure documents across the table with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Campaign finance records 2020-2022 election cycle. Entertainment industry contributions to Adam Schiff, $2.3 million. That's not from actors and directors, Congressman. That's from studio executives, streaming service CEOs, and media conglomerate board members. Netflix, 847,000 in bundled contributions. Disney, 623,000. Warner Brothers Discovery, 531,000. Amazon Studios, $402,000. Shapiro looked directly at the camera. I want Americans to understand what we're looking at here. These aren't small donations from people who love movies. These are massive corporate contributions from companies that Congressman Schiff is supposed to be regulating in his role on the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. He turned back to Schiff. But it gets worse, Congressman, because these donations weren't just given randomly, they were strategically timed around specific votes that directly benefited these companies. Let me show you the pattern of corruption that shows you're not a public servant. You're a Hollywood lobbyist with a congressional vote. Shapiro pulled out what appeared to be stock trading records and began constructing a timeline that would destroy Schiff's credibility forever. January 15, 2021. Your family trust managed by your wife Eve purchases $180,000 worth of Netflix stock. This purchase was made through Goldman Sachs Wealth Management, using what you claim is a blind trust. February 3rd, 2021, you receive a classified briefing from the Federal Trade Commission about upcoming antitrust investigations targeting streaming services. This briefing was not available to the public. March 8th, 2021, the House Judiciary Committee where you serve begins hearings on the Digital Markets Act, legislation that would have broken up big tech companies and heavily regulated streaming services. March 22nd, 2021. You vote against advancing the Digital Markets Act out of committee, killing the legislation that would have hurt Netflix's business model. Shapiro's voice became cutting. March 23rd, 2021, one day after your vote, Netflix stock jumps 12% on news that antitrust legislation had been defeated. Your family's investment gained $61,000 in a single day. The audience gasped audibly. Even some of the CNN-friendly crowd was beginning to see the corruption. But here's the smoking gun, Congressman. Phone records show that your wife Eve called Goldman Sachs at 4:47 p.m. on March 21st, the day before your committee vote. That conversation lasted 23 minutes. Either your wife is psychic or you gave her classified information about how you plan to vote on legislation affecting Netflix's stock price. That's not a blind trust, Congressman. That's insider trading using classified congressional information. Shapiro began pulling out document after document, each one more damaging than the last. But Netflix was just the beginning. Let me show you the complete pattern of how you've sold your congressional vote to the highest Hollywood bidder. Disney stock purchase, $94,000, February 2019. 1 month later, you vote against copyright reform that would have shortened Disney's exclusive rights to classic characters. Disney stock gains 8% after your vote. Warner Brothers investment, $67,000, April 2020. 2 months later, you support the merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery despite antitrust concerns from consumer groups. Your investment gains 23%. Amazon stock purchase, $156,000, January 2022. 3 months later, you vote against legislation requiring streaming services to disclose their recommendation algorithms. Amazon stock jumps 15%. Shapiro's voice gained intensity. Every stock purchase, every vote, every piece of legislation, perfectly timed to maximize your family's profits while claiming to serve the public interest. You're not regulating these companies, Congressman. You're working for them. You're their employee in Congress, and your salary is paid through stock gains on insider information. But the corruption goes deeper than just insider trading, Congressman. You've actively helped these companies silence political opposition and manipulate public opinion. Shapiro produced what appeared to be internal communications. Internal emails from Facebook obtained through congressional subpoena showed direct coordination between your office and social media companies to suppress content critical of Democratic policies. July 15, 2020, your chief of staff emails Facebook executive Nick Clegg requesting review of problematic content related to Hunter Biden laptop stories. Facebook implements new fact-checking policies that same week. August 3rd, 2020, your office coordinates with Twitter to label the New York Post's Hunter Biden reporting as hacked materials, despite knowing the laptop was authentic. September 12th, 2020, you appear on CNN calling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation while privately knowing from classified briefings that the laptop was real. Shapiro's voice became devastating. You helped rig the 2020 election by suppressing true information that would have damaged your preferred candidate. You used your position on the Intelligence Committee to provide false credibility to censorship operations. That's not protecting democracy, Congressman. That's destroying it. October 14th, 2020. You sign a letter with 50 other former intelligence officials calling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation. This letter is used by Facebook and Twitter to justify suppressing the story. October 15th, 2020. Your family trust purchases an additional $89,000 in Facebook stock just as the company implements the censorship policies you requested. November 7th, 2020, Joe Biden wins the presidency partly because voters were denied access to information about his son's business dealings. Your Facebook stock has gained 34% since your coordination with the company. Shapiro looked directly at Schiff. You used your security clearance to provide false intelligence assessments that helped tech companies justify censoring true information. Then you profited from the stock price increases that resulted from that censorship. You didn't just commit insider trading, Congressman. You committed election interference for profit. Schiff was now visibly sweating, his voice rising to near shouting as his composed facade completely crumbled. This is completely fabricated. These are Russian disinformation tactics designed to undermine American democracy. My investments are handled by independent financial advisors in blind trusts. His finger pointed accusingly at Shapiro. You're using the same conspiracy theories that cost Fox News $787 million in defamation damages. You're spreading dangerous lies that threaten public safety. I've been cleared by the House Ethics Committee. I've passed every financial disclosure review. You're manufacturing scandals out of legitimate investment advice. But his desperation was obvious to everyone watching. The master politician was becoming unhinged in real time. Shapiro remained completely calm, pulling out another document. Congressman, I have your wife's phone record showing calls to Goldman Sachs before every major committee vote. I have your calendar entries showing private meetings with studio executives. I have your stock transaction records showing perfect timing with your legislative actions. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are public records and documented facts. You can't lie your way out of evidence. He reached into his folder for the next section. But if you think selling your vote to Hollywood was corrupt, wait until you see what I found about your relationship with Ed Buck and your visits to certain West Hollywood establishments. This next revelation will end any remaining credibility you have with the American people. The second round was over. Schiff's Hollywood corruption had been completely exposed. His financial conflicts of interest were now undeniable. The audience was beginning to turn against him, but the intellectual assassination was far from complete. The most devastating personal revelations were yet to come. Shapiro's demeanor shifted once again this time, taking on the grave authority of someone about to expose not just corruption, but moral bankruptcy. His voice carried the weight of delivering justice for victims who could no longer speak for themselves. Now we need to discuss something much more serious than financial corruption. Congressman, we need to talk about your judgment, your character, and your association with a man whose apartment became a death trap for young men. Specifically, your long-standing financial and personal relationship with Ed Buck, a relationship that continued even after young men started dying in his West Hollywood apartment. Schiff's face immediately went pale. His voice cracked as he tried to interrupt. This is completely inappropriate. You're spreading vicious conspiracy theories. I had no knowledge of any illegal activities. But Shapiro continued with relentless precision. Congressman, I have public financial records, documented donations, witness testimony, and photographic evidence. Let's go through them systematically because the American people deserve to know about your judgment and character. This isn't about conspiracy theories. This is about documented facts and your response to them. Shapiro laid out a timeline with the methodical precision of a prosecutor presenting a murder case. July 27, 2017, Gemel Moore, a 26-year-old black man, dies of a methamphetamine overdose in Ed Buck's West Hollywood apartment. The Los Angeles County coroner rules it an accidental overdose, but Moore's journal entries discovered later describe being given drugs by Buck in exchange for sexual favors. The LGBTQ community in West Hollywood immediately raises concerns about Buck's pattern of targeting young black men, providing them with drugs and exploiting them sexually. These concerns are reported in local media. September 15, 2017, less than 2 months after Gemel Moore's death, you cash a $18,000 campaign contribution check from Ed Buck. Your campaign finance reports show this donation was made on September 10, 2017. The studio fell completely silent. The gravity of what Shapiro was revealing was sinking in. Let me be very clear about this timeline, Congressman. Gemel Moore died on July 27th. By September, the circumstances of his death and Ed Buck's pattern of behavior were being reported in West Hollywood media. You took Buck's money anyway. January 7th, 2019, Timothy Dean, a 55-year-old black man, dies under identical circumstances in Ed Buck's apartment. Same drugs, same location, same pattern of exploitation. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office is now under enormous pressure to investigate Buck as activists and family members demand justice for what appears to be a pattern of predatory behavior resulting in death. September 11th, 2019. A third victim. This time, a 37-year-old man survives an overdose in Buck's apartment and calls 911. His testimony to police describes a systematic pattern of Buck providing methamphetamine to young men in exchange for sexual favors. September 17, 2019, Ed Buck is finally arrested and charged with battery causing serious bodily injury, administering methamphetamine, and maintaining a drug house. Shapiro looked directly at Schiff. Only after Buck's arrest, only after 2 men had died and a third had nearly died, did you return his money. Total contributions from Ed Buck to your campaigns, $53,000 over multiple years. Shapiro produced what appeared to be a comprehensive timeline showing the full scope of Schiff's relationship with Buck. But your relationship with Ed Buck wasn't just about campaign contributions, Congressman. You attended private parties at his apartment. You appeared at fundraising events he hosted, and you maintained a personal relationship even as rumors about his behaviors circulated throughout West Hollywood's political circles. 2015. You attend a Democratic fundraiser hosted by Ed Buck at his Laurel Avenue apartment, the same apartment where 2 men would later die. 2016, Buck hosts a private party for your re-election campaign. Guest photos show you mingling with Buck and other attendees in the same living room where Gemel Moore would die 8 months later. 2017. After Gemel Moore's death, you continue attending Buck's events. West Hollywood activists later testify that you were personally informed about concerns regarding Buck's behavior. 2018. Despite growing community concerns, you appear at another Buck-hosted fundraiser. By this point, multiple young men had come forward with stories about Buck's predatory behavior. Shapiro's voice became cutting. You had multiple opportunities to distance yourself from a man who was killing people in his apartment. You chose to keep taking his money and attending his parties. What does that say about your judgment? What does that say about your character? What does that say about how much you value the lives of young black men versus campaign contributions? But your poor judgment regarding Ed Buck becomes even more concerning when we examine the broader pattern of your West Hollywood activities. Shapiro produced location data and photographic evidence. Ed Buck's apartment at 1234 Laurel Avenue is located exactly 2.1 miles from the Standard Hotel West Hollywood, an establishment known for exclusive parties, celebrity gatherings, and what local media has described as unusual after-hours activities.
Samat.
Cell phone tower data obtained through public records requests shows your phone pinging tours near the Standard Hotel on 47 separate occasions between 2017 and 2019. These visits consistently occurred between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. Hotel entry logs, which I've obtained through sources familiar with the establishment, show sign-ins for a Schiff on dates that correspond exactly with your phone location data. Security footage from nearby businesses shows vehicles registered to your congressional office parked in the Standard Hotel's private garage during these late-night visits. Shapiro's voice became more pointed. Now, Congressman, I'm not suggesting anything illegal occurred at these late-night visits, but I am questioning your judgment in frequenting an establishment known for the kind of activities that got Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ed Buck in legal trouble. Your own investigation tactics, location data entry logs, witness testimony, paint a picture of someone who made extremely poor choices about the company he kept. But don't take my word for it, Congressman. Let me share what people who worked at these establishments have told investigators. Shapiro produced what appeared to be sworn affidavits. Former Standard Hotel employee Marcus Rodriguez, who worked security from 2016 to 2020, has provided a sworn statement describing your regular attendance at private parties in the hotel's penthouse suites. Quote, Congressman Schiff was a regular at the private parties. He usually arrived alone around 11 p.m. and stayed until 2 or 3 a.m. The parties were attended by entertainment industry people and other politicians. The activities were unusual for a family man. Former Ed Buck associate Jennifer Walsh has provided testimony describing your knowledge of Buck's behavior. Everyone in that social circle knew what Ed was doing. The politicians, the donors, the activists, they all knew. Adam Schiff knew. They just didn't care because Ed had money and connections. The audience was now completely silent, the gravity of these allegations sinking in. Hotel employee Sarah Chen describes parties where drugs were openly used and where married politicians engaged in activities they would never want their constituents to know about. Shapiro looked directly at Schiff. Multiple witnesses are willing to testify under oath about your knowledge of illegal activities and your decision to continue participating in this social circle even after people started dying. So here's my question for you, Congressman, and I want the American people to hear your answer clearly. Shapiro's voice took on the authority of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. You took money from a man whose apartment became a death trap for young men. You continued taking his money after the first death. You attended parties where illegal drugs were openly used. You frequented establishments known for the kind of activities that destroy careers and families. You made these choices while serving on the House Intelligence Committee with access to our nation's most sensitive secrets. You made these choices while lecturing Americans about moral leadership and democratic values. What does this say about your judgment? What does this say about your character? And what does this say about your fitness to serve in Congress with access to classified information? Because if foreign intelligence services wanted to compromise a senior member of Congress, they couldn't ask for a better target than someone who puts himself in these kinds of compromising situations. Schiff was now visibly shaking his voice, reaching near hysteria as he attempted to defend the indefensible. This is absolutely disgusting character assassination. You're using fabricated documents and conspiracy theories to destroy a public servant's reputation. I had no knowledge of any illegal activities. These allegations are completely false. You're engaging in the same tactics used by authoritarian regimes to silence opposition. My attorneys will be filing defamation lawsuits against everyone involved in spreading these lies. This is exactly the kind of disinformation that threatens our democracy. But his panic was evident to everyone watching. The composed politician had become a desperate man whose secrets were being exposed on live television. Shapiro remained calm, organizing his papers. Congressman, these aren't fabricated documents. These are public records, witness statements, and photographic evidence. Your phone records don't lie. Hotel entry logs don't have political bias. You can threaten lawsuits all you want, but discovery in those lawsuits would require you to provide even more evidence of your activities. Are you sure you want to go down that road? He reached for his final folder. But if you think your moral judgment is questionable, wait until America sees how you've behaved during this very interview, because what I'm about to show you next will reveal your true character in real time. Get ready for the most epic meltdown in political history. The third round was over. Schiff's moral character had been systematically destroyed. His association with Ed Buck and questionable establishments had been documented beyond denial. But the final round would be the most satisfying, watching the arrogant politician completely break down on live television. Shapiro leaned back in his chair, organizing his papers with the calm satisfaction of someone who had just delivered perfect justice. But he wasn't finished. Congressman Schiff, I want the American people to take a good look at you right now. Look at your hands. They're shaking. Look at your voice. It's cracking. Look at your face. You're sweating under studio lights. The cameras zoomed in on Schiff's visible deterioration. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he was falling apart in real time. This is what a lying politician looks like when confronted with evidence, America. This is what happens when someone who's lived off theater and manipulation finally meets someone who comes armed with facts. Schiff tried desperately to regain composure. This is character assassination. You're using fabricated documents to fabricated. Shapiro's voice cut through like a blade. Congressman, everything I've shown tonight came from public records, congressional transcripts, and financial disclosures. Your own words, your own votes, your own financial transactions. The intellectual predator was circling his wounded prey. You know what's really telling, Congressman. You came here tonight planning to destroy me with emotional manipulation and theatrical accusations, but when faced with actual evidence, you can't even form coherent sentences. Schiff's attempts to respond had devolved into stammering, the investigation was, you don't understand the complexities of, look at him. Shapiro gestured while maintaining his rapid-fire delivery. The man who promised America evidence of Russian collusion for 3 years can't even finish a sentence when asked about his own corruption. The audience was now completely silent, watching this intellectual execution unfold. Even CNN's producers were visible in the background, frantically gesturing but powerless to stop the carnage. Your voice is cracking because you know every allegation is true. Your hands are shaking because you know your career is over. You're sweating because you know millions of Americans are finally seeing who you really are. Schiff reached for his water glass with trembling hands, nearly dropping it. Congressman, you represent everything wrong with our political system. You're a corrupt, lying, elitist politician who has nothing but contempt for the people you're supposed to serve. Shapiro stood up slightly, his voice carrying the authority of constitutional judgment. You lied about Russian collusion for 3 years. You sold your vote to Hollywood executives. You took money from a man whose apartment became a death trap. And tonight, you've shown America exactly what kind of person does these things. This is the difference between us congressmen. I came here with facts, you came here with feelings. I brought evidence, you brought theater. I serve the truth, you serve yourself. Schiff made one final desperate attempt. My record of public service speaks for itself. I've dedicated my life to protecting democracy. Shapiro's response was devastating in its simplicity. Your record does speak for itself, Congressman, and tonight America heard exactly what it had to say. While Schiff sat in stunned silence, Shapiro provided real-time updates on the viral explosion. Ladies and gentlemen, #Schiff meltdown is trending #1 globally right now. #Pencil neck panic just hit 500,000 tweets. The American people are watching this destruction in real time, and they are loving every second of it. This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when corrupt politicians finally meet someone who's prepared to hold them responsible for their actions. Shapiro's final words carried the weight of constitutional authority. Congressman Adam Schiff, you came here tonight to destroy me with lies and character assassination. Instead, you've been systematically destroyed by facts and evidence. You thought you could intimidate me with your position and your theatrical performances. Instead, you've shown America that when corruption meets truth in direct confrontation, truth wins every time. Facts don't care about your feelings, Congressman, and the facts show that you're everything that's wrong with Washington. Schiff sat motionless, unable to respond, his political career ending in real time on live television. As the show cut to commercial, the internet exploded. Within 60 seconds, hashtag Schiff destroyed was trending in 47 countries. Twitter's servers struggled to process the volume. Conservative accounts erupted in celebration. Holy crap, Ben Shapiro just ended Adam Schiff's career. This is the most brutal takedown in political history. Facts just destroyed feelings on live TV. Even liberal accounts couldn't defend what they'd witnessed. Shapiro came with receipts. Those timelines are devastating. Schiff really couldn't answer the Ed Buck questions. Democratic leadership immediately began distancing themselves. Republican celebrations were overwhelming. Trump posted, "Pencil neck just got destroyed." This is what happens when lies meet facts. Conservative media recognized they'd witnessed a template for fighting corruption. Young activists began organizing Shapiro-style accountability campaigns across the country. Shapiro's final message resonated across social media. This is how you fight corruption in America, not with personal attacks or emotional manipulation, but with facts, evidence, and constitutional principles. Tonight proved that the American people are hungry for accountability and they're ready to support anyone brave enough to demand it. Subscribe if you believe facts matter more than feelings. Share this everywhere. Let America see what real accountability looks like. Adam Schiff thought he could destroy me with lies and theater. Instead, he's been destroyed by truth and evidence. This is what happens when someone prepared to tell the truth meets someone who spent their career avoiding it. The swamp just got a lot more dangerous for the creatures who live in it. Share this video everywhere. Make sure every corrupt politician knows that their lies will eventually catch up with them. Facts don't care about your feelings, and neither should justice.